144p. You know this picture even if you've never thought about it. The video stalls, the image dissolves into colored mush, and for a few seconds, you're staring at 144p, just 256 by 144 pixels, more than 200 times fewer than a single 4K frame. At this size, your eyes don't really read the frame. They gamble on what's there. Faces collapse into blobs. Text smears into nothing. Motion turns to soup. Nobody chooses this anymore. You only meet it in one situation, when your connection is gasping and the video has to keep moving anyway. Not because it's 2006, because your Wi-Fi just gave up. One rung up though, and it already looks like a different world. 240p. Step up one rung and the world starts to resolve. At 240p, the count jumps to roughly 100,000 pixels. The threshold where things stop being hints and start being objects you can name. Still soft, still crude, but a person reads as a person now. Here's the part that gets misremembered. 240p was never a failure of imagination. It's the size early YouTube actually served when it went live in 2005, including the very first thing anyone ever uploaded, 18 seconds of a guy standing in front of two elephants at the zoo. The platform served video this small on purpose because the typical home connection couldn't push anything heavier without stalling. The engineers weren't capped by what a screen could display. They were capped by what a wire could carry. A verdict handed down by infrastructure, not by the limits of vision. 360p. For a brief stretch, 360p sat on hardware people actually paid for. Where early portable players topped out, what some phone cameras captured, what security systems recorded. For a moment it wore the label, good enough to sell. 640 by 360 pixels is the first point on this ladder where small things earn the right to be read. Headlines are legible, a brand mark identifiable, a face carrying a real expression rather than a smear. But lean toward fine print or anything moving quickly, and the blocks reassemble in front of you. 360p also marks a quiet handover. Up to here, resolution was governed almost entirely by how much data the network could shift. After it, the bottleneck moves into the glass you're looking through. 480p. It's easy to forget this once felt like a rival. A DVD on a decent set impressed people, and text you could read from across the couch felt worth paying for. Standard definition lays down 720 by 480 pixels. Enough that letters resolve, features settle onto faces, and you can follow a story without your brain patching the gaps. Here's the detail rarely told. 480p wasn't chosen because it looked beautiful. It was the most you could squeeze onto a single layer disk, a storage constraint that hardened into a global habit. For years, the whole planet watched its movies at a number set by the math of optical media, not the limits of the eye. The catch haunts every rung. Throw 480p onto a big panel and the joins show instantly. Sharp up close, coming apart at scale. 720p. Something changed here, and it wasn't gradual. The first time most people met true high definition, the reaction wasn't technical, it was physical. The picture didn't just look cleaner, it looked present. Less like a photograph of a scene than a window onto one. 720p stacks, 1280 by 720 pixels. Close to a million, nearly 3 times what 480p offered. Its real job is subtraction. It removes the instant your eye notices the grid. Sit at a normal distance and the mosaic dissolves into one continuous surface. And that shifted what creators made. At 480p, there was no point rendering tiny detail. It vanished anyway. At 720p, it held. So sharper resolution didn't only lift the picture, it widened what was worth putting in it. 1440p. This is the rung television mostly skipped, and the computer monitor made its own. 1440p, also written QHD or loosely 2K, carries 2,560 by 1,440 pixels, around 3.7 million. Close to double full HD, it lands where a screen gets noticeably sharper without demanding the hardware the next step insists on. Why it belongs to monitors comes down to distance. A TV sits across a room. A monitor sits an arm's length away, where the eye catches softness more easily. So the extra density pays off immediately in crisper text, cleaner edges, more room on the desktop. It became the favorite of people who care about the picture but also have to drive it, gamers especially. Pushing it asks real work from a graphics card, but nothing like going further. The considered middle between the old default and the bleeding edge. The limit is reach. 1440p rewards you up close. Step back or blow it onto a living room screen, and much of its advantage evaporates. Exactly the problem the next resolution was built to solve. 4K. 4K doesn't just sharpen the image. It rearranges your relationship to the screen. Ultra HD spreads 3,840 by 2,160 pixels across the panel. Over 8 million, more than double a 1,440p frame, and 4 times the old 1080p standard. That density buys distance. The denser the grid, the further back you can sit before softness creeps in. On a 65-inch set, a 1080p signal goes soft around 2.5 meters. A 4K signal holds well past that. That's why 4K settled into living rooms rather than desks. Its payoff is filling a large space while keeping the picture intact across the room. Most 4K sets fold in HDR2, which often does more than pixels alone. Shadows keep detail instead of crushing to black. Highlights stay bright without bleaching the frame. The caveat is supply. 4K needs a fat, steady stream of data, and much of what you watch was never shot at 4K. A 1080p source poured into a 4K panel isn't 4K. It's the same information spread thinner. 8K. On paper, 8K wins this entire list. As an argument for spending money today, it's the thinnest entry here. 8K lays down 7,680 by 4,320 pixels. About 33 million, 4 times a 4K frame and 16 times the old 1080p standard. At that density, on a big enough panel, the grid ceases to exist. 2 things undercut it. First, supply. Almost nothing is filmed in native 8K, and most streaming stops at 4K. Feed an 8K display anything lower, and its processor invents the missing detail. More pixels, not more picture. Second, your own eyes. At the distances people sit from a television, the eye can't separate a 4K image from an 8K one.